Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out this evening to come and learn a bit more about PredictWind. My name is Nick Olsen. Some of you I do know. I can see from the participant list. I did the RNI last time, and I've worked for PredictWind for about 8 years, and I do all our webinars. So I and R a lot, so you have to live with that. I hope you've got a in hand. So what we're going to talk about is I'm just going to give you a brief overview of PredictWind, because there's some people there that I don't know. I see attending, and maybe I'm going to assume that some people know nothing, and I know that some people know quite a lot. So I'll give you a quick overview of PredictWind and the apps that you can use. And then we're sort of going to really jump into the stuff that's 100% relevant to the RNI. So we're going to talk about polars. We will throughout talk about models a wee bit. We're going to talk about the offshore app and the download settings that you will need to use that when you're on your SAT connection. And then we're actually going to, we'll discuss the weather routing. We'll probably talk about models a bit there too. And then we're going to talk about I'll just show you at some stage. I'll show you how to download the YB tracking. So in the race, you guys use YB trackers, and so we have an integration with YB. And so if you want to, every time you do a download and the going, but also about where you're positioning yourself against the fleet in relation to the weather systems. So I'll jump into a screen share. I did try and quickly have a look at how to not show myself in the screen share before, but it got too hard. So you're gonna have to see me for the whole time. I'm sorry. This will probably take about an hour, I think, for us to go through all of this. So you see here we have, and sorry if you're familiar with it, but anyway, we have the PredictWind and the PredictWind website. So this app and the website is where you set some stuff up. It's what the app that you use when you're at home, when you're at the marina, and you can use I use the website a wee bit for doing prep sort of stuff, before we leave. So that's sort of the everyday usage. Lots of information in there. Can be a bit faster to use than having to select all your parameters in the offshore app. In saying that, once you're happy with everything in the offshore app, you don't need to change anything. So the offshore app is what we use when we're going out of cell phone coverage. And so when we, any time that we go onto a SAT connection, we use the offshore app. But even if you're just doing a coastal passage, even when I'm doing SSANZ triple races, I'll use the offshore app, and I'll have all my routes downloaded in there, just because at any time that I'm offline, I don't need to reload it. Whereas if I was using the PredictWind app, you need to reload it. It doesn't save the data when you close the app. So the offshore app is really what we're going to talk about a lot this evening, and just cover off how you use that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, so everything I'm going to show you tonight is either going to be, I'm on a laptop, a Mac laptop. The offshore app, you can use that on a Mac, a PC, an Android tablet or phone, and an iOS, so a device, so an iPhone or an iPad. When I did the RNA last time, I used an iPad the whole time. I didn't use my laptop at all. So anyway, I'm not really going to go through sort of, the general tools. Obviously, when we're planning stuff, we look at big picture things. We go to wind maps, and we can, compare models and look at, bigger picture sort of situations and get a bit of a thought process of what's going to happen. Generally, when I talk to lots of people about cruising, and so we're always talking about departure times. Obviously, you guys will be starting, a certain period after the last boat's finished, so you don't really get a choice about when you start too much. So you just get, once you do know what the start time is, you want to be starting to run your, your weather routing and looking at your maps. So yeah, we're not going to really delve into that side of it. We're just really going to look at the tools that will be useful to you. So we'll just come down here, and we're going to jump into the weather routing tool. And the reason I want to come in here is, I just need to move my zoom controls, is this, before we do any weather routing, we need to set up our polars. So if you don't know what polars are, it's your performance polars. It's how fast the software thinks that your boat is going to go in any given condition. So, you know, at 135 true wind angle and 15 knots, you know, my boat does 9 knots or whatever it does. So, yeah, so you need to set that up, and there's a couple of ways you can do it. So up here, so I've come into, I'm in the as I said before, I'm in the PredictWind website. I've come to weather routing, and over here I've got routing preferences. And so I've clicked on that, and then you'll see I come in here and I've got a boat polar. Not sure what I've got set up in here. I think it's a catamaran looking at the polar curve. So I'm in the advanced tab, so we can come over here to boat type, and we can click on predefined. And so I know some of your boats will be in here, some of you won't. The boat that I sailed on last time, we didn't have a predefined polar in here. And so what I actually did was I knew that we were somewhat similar performance to a FAR 40. So I went and chose a FAR 40. And then from there, I was able to use that as the basis to develop my polar. And so even if your boat type is in here, you know, you've got the exact design, chances are it's not going to be, you know, exactly how you sail your boat. So for the ease of explanation today, I'll stick with the FAR 40. And so I've got that, I've set that as my predefined polar. I could just use that polar and it would probably be all right. But if you really want to use the tool to its full potential, you can, there's a button here that says copy to advanced polar. So you click on that, and so now it's copied that FAR 40 polar over here into the advanced tab. And so then you'll see here in this column here, these are my true wind speeds. So I've got 4, 6, 8, 12, you know, up to 30 there. And you don't have to have that many rows if you don't want to. And then you'll see here it has a true wind angle of 30. And then and which I really don't know why it has that one. If it was me, I would delete them. I'll delete this whole column just like that with the minus button down the bottom there. And you'll see here, this next column is actually my targets. So my upwind target true wind angles. And so you'll see here in 4 knots, and straight away I can see that this isn't that realistic. So we see true wind speed 4 knots and a true wind angle of 46, and it thinks I'm going to go 4.07 knots, and I'm just not. So, you know, let's say it's actually 3. And so I could go through these, and at 4 knots and, you know, at 50, I mean, I'm not sure if a FAR 40 goes faster than the wind in 4 knots. So, you know, I'd need to go through and adjust those to the numbers that I know that my boat goes at, and also that looks realistic. I mean, that would be my first step, is to make sure it looks sensible and realistic. If you've sailed your boat a fair bit, you'll have a really good idea of what these numbers are, especially your upwind numbers. Some of these numbers where you might sail with a particular sail, you know, you might have an A5 or whatever that you use and at a particular time, and you might know, oh, we always sail at, you know, 130 with that on, or, you know, or the range is one, and it's a fast angle for us. So yeah, I would even when I set my polars up, I would go as far as making the numbers that I knew where our boat liked to sail. I would even not make them better, but I'd possibly make the other numbers around it not as good, so that I could make this curve fit where, so this curve over here on the right hand side, if I just zoom that out, I could have that, you know, it would sort of be in the sweet spots for my boat. The polars would you know, it would kind of bulge out in those areas. You know, you don't have to do that, but just I wanted the router to at least try and sort of fit in with how we wanted to sail the boat. So as you can probably tell, that there's a fair bit that you can do here. I mean, you can be as simple or as complicated as you want. I mean, obviously I do this for a job, so I was probably pretty, went quite far down the rabbit hole with it. You don't have to do that. You can keep it relatively simple, and I mean, and use the, you know, the router as a guide for your strategy and your tactics. So if you really want to dig into your polars, do reach out to our support team. You'll hear me say that all night, but really the people on our support team, 4 of them are ex-Volvo sailors, you know, so they know what they're talking about. They know what it's like. Some of them have done this race a couple of times. So, you know, reach out to them and ask them some questions if you're unsure about something for your boat in particular or your setup. They probably won't do it for you, but they'll definitely help you, you know, get these things right, or if you're stuck on how to do it. While we're in polars, I'll come back to this page because there's some other stuff I want to talk about. But before we do that, I really want to talk about this. So we have our boat polar, and then since the last R&I, we have this feature called wave polars. We've always had wave polars, but the wave polar that we have now is actually really cool. And so all you need to do is come into this wave polar tab. You need to make sure this advanced wave polar over here is turned off. So if I turn that on, that would be like that. And this is actually the old one, still there. But you turn that off and you just put this wave polar on here and you can unclick this button here, and you can change your displacement. So whatever your displacement is, you can put that in there. Put your waterline length in, your beam and your draft if you're unsure how we're measuring or what we're expecting there. You can see it's not your keel draft that we want to know about. But what that's going to do, it's going to give you some information on how your boat's going to behave in the different wave states. So and we'll look at this as we go through, but the wave states are going to be calculating off the wind wave, the primary swell, secondary swell, and tertiary swell. So, I mean, for racing boats, you're kind of going to push through regardless, but there's definitely some information there that might make you change the way that you're going to run your boat, as in what your safety protocol might be. You know, you might have more than one safety protocol sort of setting that you run on board, or it might help you to plan your sail selection. Obviously, two-handed sailing preparation and everything is, you know, and thinking ahead is a huge advantage. It's the times that you get caught out that you lose a lot. So yeah, anyway, we'll look at this more, but I would recommend using that. It's awesome. You'll see here we have fastest time and comfort. If you want to do well in the race, don't use the comfort settings. Regardless of what routing I'm looking at, I always use the fastest time, just because I think that even cruisers should be using the fastest time and then routing around anything they don't like. And that's the same goes for the R&I. You know, there's a possibility that there's going to be weather conditions that you want to avoid. And so you might do certain things to do that. And that might come into your routing. So, you know, seamanship is always first and foremost. So if we scroll down this page a bit more, and we can adjust this in the offshore app. So I won't sort of dwell on it too much, but we do actually have a depth avoidance setting. If you set this really deep, you'll get lots of failures on your route, because if you know, lots of the coast isn't super deep, and the router can't. If you're inside the shallow area, it can move it out a little bit, but it won't. You know, once you get over a certain amount, it won't move it out, and you'll get a route failure. So if that happens, you know what your problem is. I mean, you're in a racing boat, I would have thought, depending on, unless you're in a 50-footer, you might not want to go into 5-meter water, but that's, this isn't a navigation tool, it's a weather tool. So really it's about giving you more accurate routes. So if you've got a weather router that's sending you over land or cutting off headlands, it's really not giving you an accurate route. I know of some very expensive routing software that does that a lot. And it's not PredictWind. And so you see here we have our tidal and ocean currents. Not a huge thing because they are, you're only going to get ocean currents around the country. So it does, obviously when going down the west coast, there are times, you're going to get tidal currents, and it is nice to be able to see the ocean currents as well. But they're not going to make huge difference. It's not like we're crossing the Gulf Stream or something. But 100% use them. Might want to have a look at the different models, see which one gives you more detail. This here is something that you may want to look at. It's not something we usually talk about in a webinar, but because we're talking to racing sailors. So advanced routing adjustments. We actually put this in for the IMOCAs. They like to scale their wind speed. So you might ask, why do they want to scale their wind speed? All of the routing is run off the average wind speed. So when we were looking at the forecast before, anytime you look at the forecast, you see the wind map, and then you'll see the gust map. So everything is run off the wind map, not the gust map. So there's no gusts calculated in your routing. So, and that can make a difference. So sometimes these guys will run this at 110%. Or whatever, because they're trying to scale the wind to account, the modeling to account for the gusts. So, but there's a bit, but it can be quite tricky. So, if it's relatively light winds for your route, you don't really want to use the scaling because you don't have gusts. But if it's going to be a really windy leg, you might want to do a bit of scaling, especially once your boat gets surfing. But the wave polar is also going to account for your boat surfing, so to a certain extent. True wind direction adjustment. I mean, this is, I just wouldn't. You can adjust the entire wind set in your routing. So I could move it 5 degrees. Let's say it was, at one point it was at 40, coming from 45, coming from the northeast. I could make it, -5, and everything would be at 40, or everything would be 5 degrees less. It's something that some of the, people doing really long races to sort of see if systems moved one way or the other. They might put that true wind direction adjustment in. Probably more than enough talking about that. If you find it all overwhelming, just don't even bother with it. I've never used it. Okay, so that's our polars, and really important to get them set up. When you have set all this up, you come into your weather routing, and I just need to move my zoom controls again, and I'm just going to click this blue button over here that's going to calculate my route. So I don't really want to talk about the routing too much in here because I want to go into the offshore app, but I will just quickly calculate this because I do want to explain something that you're looking at in here, because I'm sure that some of you will look at it and wonder. But what we are looking at in this map, and this is important to know, when you look at the map in the PredictWind app and on the website, these wind maps that you're looking at are 50-kilometer resolution. So I'll talk more about resolution in a minute. But so you're not getting the high resolution modeling. The weather route, and this is the case at any time, the weather route is always using the highest resolution modeling it can. So for the PWG and the PWE model, in some places around the country, that'll be 1 kilometer resolution. Other places, it'll be 8-kilometer resolution. If you're looking at the GFS model, it's 27-kilometer resolution the whole way around the country or everywhere. Sometimes you'll hear people say that the GFS is 13K. Yes, they run it at 13K, but the output that NOAA do is actually 27-kilometer resolution. In case anyone doesn't know what resolution is, it's basically the squares, the world cut up into squares, and in that square box, they generally assume that it's a constant within that box. So if you have a 27-kilometer box, for instance, and half of that box is on land, wind is generally 30% slower over land. So obviously you get a misreading of the conditions or misforecast of the conditions out on the water. So that's why resolution is important. And that's why, you know, like all around Auckland, you'll see high resolution. You know, coming into Napier, last time I actually downloaded a high-res grid, just one high-res grid, so that I could sort of, the wind had gone pretty light, so I could see what was going on. And it was really useful. So yeah, there's lots of little things that you can use, but I'll talk more about the modeling when we go into the next thing. So you'll see these funny indicators all over the map. They are from the GMDSS forecast. All around New Zealand, the GMDSS forecast is written by Met Service. It's basically, we'll talk about, you know, frontal bands, you know, troughs, lows, and can be pretty handy to just give you a little bit more explanation of what's going on. So if you want to see what they say, you just click on one, it'll say what it is there. It's a ridge, and then you click on it and you can actually go into the GMDSS forecast, which is a written forecast by a meteorologist. While we're here, so as I mentioned before, you can see where everyone else in the race is. We were just implementing this in the last race. I think on the last leg, I had this turned on and I could see it. It was pretty cool. Can't say we made much use of it. I didn't feel very well on the last leg. And some food and drinks and Napier, who knows. Anyway, so I click on this YB events and look at that. I'm in the Sydney Hobart. So it says it up there. So you'll come in here. So you need to do this in here. You need to come in to I think you can do it in the PredictWind app, but you need to come into the PredictWind app or the website, and you need to come into tools and YB events, and you'll click in here. And it's not in here yet because us and SSANZ have to wait until the link is actually live from YB. That's usually at best about 2 days before the regatta. Who knows? But as soon as it's in there, we will add it, and I'll let someone at SSANZ know, and they'll probably tell you all. So you come in here and you choose your race. You know, for instance, I can choose the Rourke Caribbean 600, and I can add it to my weather routing and departure planning pages, so that you can actually see it on the routing. So there's two ways to see it. You could actually see it against your routing, which if you're a slower boat, it can be a real pain in the ass because you have everyone else's positions all over your map. But if you're a fast boat, it's quite cool because you can see where everyone else is, or there might be only one or two boats that you really want to see. So yeah, you can turn that on and off. So I've got it turned off because I don't want it to go on my page. Okay, so yeah, we don't really need to talk about AIS data. Super handy when you're out on the water, but we can talk about that in a minute. Okay, there's a Q&A question here. Yes, you can import your polars just like Expedition, and it won't route you over the land. Cool. Or anywhere else. Righty-ho. So I am going to stop sharing, and I am going to choose the offshore app. So we're going to go into the offshore app. So I use, as I mentioned at the start, when I did the RNI, I pretty much exclusively used an iPad. Everything that we're going to look at is on my Mac. So some of the buttons are slightly different. So you can, but they're not that different. All the functionality is the same. So before we get into this, you'll see here, if I just zoom in on my map, and to the person asking about importing polars, there's where we were before, there's an import button, and you can import it in there, and I think it tells you what file types it's got to be. Anyway, if you struggle with that, just reach out to the support desk. So that's support@predictwind.com. You'll see here I have these funny little areas marked all over my marked on my map, and that's for when I've been running some other routes and I didn't want the router to go through these areas. So you can create boundaries, and it's not something that we had when we did the last RNI, but for instance, you know, last time we went round, anyone that's here that did that, you might want to have put, I think it's about here, you might want to have put a boundary in here. Is it the Pandora Banks or something? Pretty horrendous. You know, the sea state when we came around here was awful. I mean, maybe you wouldn't want to force the router that much, but you might want to just, if there's particular areas, you might want to put this in. I'll tell you what, somewhere else where I would put one while we're at it. You're not going, you're going into Picton, aren't you? Yeah, I was going to, well, you might still want to put one. Oops. Yeah, might want to put one around off Macra there. You know, pretty exciting sail into there. There's no more questions there. It's just the same one. Okay, so we're in the offshore app. I'll turn that off again. So it's a funny little setting, that little box there. We've got our start point here, this green one, and the red one down there is our destination waypoint. Up here in this little box, if I move one of these waypoints, you'll see the lat long changing in there. You can manually type in these, the lat long, or if you have an Iridium Go paired with the offshore app, it will show you where you are on the Iridium Go. There'll be a little white dot on the screen, so you can just move your waypoint to wherever you are. It can be very, very handy to be able to do that. Just to come back to sailing around this part of the country up here, I still remember very clearly coming around here and coming off watch and lying in the floor of the boat, which we often did in the boat that we sailed on. But I was able to push 4 buttons on my iPad, and then I put it on the bunk, and 20 minutes later, all of our weather data for this leg had been updated, which was, and it was a really strategic time for us to want to get new routing, and also it coincided with when the models had updated. So that was something that I was going to talk about before. So, and we'll talk about it when we do the download, I'll show you. Knowing when the models update is really, really important. So if you look in the PredictWind app, or if you look on here, you can see when they download. Right now, the ECMWF has finished updating, so that, other than the Spire model, that is the last model to update. But we generally consider all the models updated after the ECMWF is updated. And the reason we do that is that the Spire used to take quite a bit longer, but it doesn't anymore. It actually updates, I'll tell you. Spire, yeah, actually, so Spire's not going to update tonight until 10:30. So that can be good and bad, because it gives you another model to look at if you want to later. but so the PWG and the current model run updated at 6:05, and then the PWE updated at 8 o'clock, ECMWF at 8:30. So GFS at 6 o'clock as well. And the UKMO updated at 6 o'clock. So you see there's 3 models there that updated, earlier. And that could be, if you feel that, let's say you have just come around Cape Reinga and those models have, because it's decision time, right? Especially if it's upwind, like we're looking at, well, not looking at there, but because I've scrolled too far forward. But yeah, upwind, and they could, making those decisions could be really important. You probably, obviously, you would have run your routing before that and looked at it, but yeah, knowing the model update times is super important. I would even schedule it in. I would have them written somewhere on the boat that unless you're good at remembering them. But when you get really tired, sometimes it's good to just know those things. But yeah, you might have a particular time of the day that you like to do it, and you just know that you've got the new model runs. So really important to know when they update, and also just the fact that those, like the PWG updating early and it's a high resolution model at particular times, that can be really, really handy. Like, do we go into the coast or not, kind of thing, near the end of a leg, or it can be a bit of a game changer. We know that those sorts of things can make big differences. So we are in the offshore app. If we were going to, as I said, we can, we have all our, we can change the lat long, we can put them in there, we can type in here. We can also save, save the courses. So I could click on that, I could save it, I could write, RNI leg, what is it? 3, 2, 2, 2, 23. Leg 2, and then that'll be saved. So anytime I could have those, if I had some waypoints in there, and just so you know how to add waypoints, you can add a waypoint in, and you can click on that there, and you can make it a port or starboard rounding, or a go-to waypoint. So important to know. Let's delete that. If you don't need to put waypoints in, don't put them in. I would probably use the boundaries more than the waypoints, personally. I just like them. Okay. So we've got our start and our finish waypoint set up. We're underway. And so we have no cell phone reception. And so we need to do a satellite download. So we come over here. Actually, before we do that, you'll see here, if I move these, see, I clicked on the grib tab over here on the menu. And if I move these, it moves this box. The bigger I make it, the bigger that box gets. The smaller I make the leg, the smaller. Sometimes it really pays to manually adjust these if you want to control your file size. Lots of our weather comes from the west, so sometimes we might want to skew this box over and get more, more weather out here. I can't. What were the young lads that was it moving violation? I think they nearly went. They probably needed to do that last time. On this league, they headed out pretty far out into the Tasman. So you might, there's 2 things here. A, you can control what your grib area looks like. But B, you can also have it, a larger or smaller area will control your file download size. So let's just put it like that. And you might go, oh, look, he hasn't got that whole area covered. I'm not too worried about that because my weather routing is always going to cover the whole leg. And this, I just want to know the weather for the next 12 hours. I mean, I could come back later and do another download where I got a big area and I might just get one model. And we'll look at that in a minute. So anyway, make that area a bit bigger. So we can come in here and we can click on download. And I have all of these options here. So if I'm on my Iridium Go, I need to make this file size, estimated file size, I need to make this small down here. And I'm just actually going to click next and go through the next page because I'm going to turn the currents off. So we can't download the currents. Have I turned them off? Yeah, I have. Oh, it's just this that's big. We can't download the currents over our Iridium Go. They're too big. You could probably get a really small area and download it on one of the models. I think one of them is a lot smaller than the others. I can't remember which one off the top of my head. But what you do with that is you download all the ocean data before you leave, and then that will always be there. So if I've downloaded the ocean data previously, then that's fine. Ocean data doesn't change that quickly, not like the atmospheric data. So I've got my grids here. I want to change this time step to 12 hourly. This is sort of all in correlation with the number of days that I want to get. But you know, I only want to know for the next 3 days what the weather's doing. You can see here my file size is coming down. I can't get the high resolution stuff. There is some ways that I could manipulate that if I wanted to just get, you know, let's say one grib. I could maybe get an ECM WF grib and I could put it over a particular area and get the 9K EC. But the reality is the weather routing tool gives you so much information and is using all that high resolution data that we're really using the gribs to give us an overview. And this is a big advantage of what PredictWind does over you know, other software where you have to download the gribs and then run your routing off the gribs, because getting those gribs is actually quite hard to get all that data over a connection like an Iridium Go. So the fact that the router is going to calculate the highest resolution gribs is pretty awesome. So we've got 12 hourly, 3 days, 50-kilometer resolution. You'll see there, all of a sudden, my file size has come down to 95.7 kilobytes. That's pretty awesome. I can get all the models, so I can have a look and see if there's any great variance between them. The weather routing will also tell me that. And I can select what parameters I want. At a minimum, you want wind, pressure, and rain. Gust is pretty nice, especially if it's a windier leg. Cape, I mean, if there was a front coming through, so how you see the front is that you can see the rain band with the wind direction change moving through. You might, if there was a front coming through, if you ran this and you saw a front coming through, you probably know from your preparation. I might get the cape, because if there's cape in the front, I know that it's going to have a pretty big bang. If there's no cape, I know that it's not going to be quite as hard. You know, so not quite, you know, we all know that when fronts come through, sometimes they just whip it, and other times it's pretty benign. So the cape level can be an indicator of it being nasty or not. It's really what I'm getting at there. Just need to turn my air conditioning off before it freezes me. Where's the button? There we go. And the wave, you know, yeah, let's get it, because our file size isn't that big. So we're in here. I can click on this little wheel here on your iPad or your Android tablet. It's called Weather Routing Preferences. So if I click on that, this is important that we look at. I need to click over to the advanced, because I haven't, if I'd closed the offshore app and then reopened it after I made those changes in the PredictWind app, it would have automatically come across. Anyway, we see in here, map follows the boats. That's just a preference about the map following the boat when you move it. I don't like it. Departure planning, we don't need to worry about that. Comfort settings, as I said before, not a race-winning move. Polar speed adjustment. This can be pretty important. If you, you know, let's say you blow out a sail, you wrap it around something, you know, you might need to adjust your polars. If, you know, if maybe the person you're sailing with has become seasick and you guys can't sail, you can't sail the boat at the level that you could when there's two fully functioning people. you might want to change the polar speed. So you can do that. You can have, change it for upwind. So 90, that would be 90% of 100. So that's 10% down. And as I said, if we blew out a sail, let's say we blew out our one and only running spinnaker, and it was, we might need to change that downwind setting. And also at night, night sailing's hard, and sometimes you just can't sail the boat as well at night as you can during the day. So you might want your weather routing to more accurately reflect that. And so you can adjust all that stuff. I'll just put that one back to 100 for reality. Tack and jibe penalty. You might want to put this up. Tacking and jibing two-handed is always exciting, especially in a bit of breeze. And so, you might want to put that up. So you need to know that the router will do something if it thinks it can get you there 1 second faster. So you always need to sanity check what it's telling you. So think about that one. You might want to turn those tack and jibe penalties up. Motoring, not relevant. Wave polar, we want that turned on. And as I mentioned before, we can adjust our depth avoidance, and we could also change the ocean current model. And then we can, if we want to, use these advanced routing adjustments. We could turn that on, and we could, put that at 108 or whatever. Not going to do it. Okay, so we've got everything set up in there. We don't need to do this every time. As I mentioned before, I'm pretty sure it's 4 taps I could download the weather. So once we're happy with these settings, they're set. They don't change. And that's kind of what's a cool thing about this. GMDSS, let's get it. It's some really good information that we can read written by a meteorologist, and it's a really small file size. So then I'll just click on next. Observations. So we can get observations. So this is all of our observations, all of the Met Service observations, and all of the Coast Guard observations. So they are, that there's times when wanting to know, we didn't have this feature in the last RNI, and there were times that I just wished I could see that, especially over a sat connection. Obviously that you might be close to land, but yeah, and there's a surprising number of them around the country that are relevant. As I said, ocean data, download that before you go. Satellite imagery, I'm not a fan. If you're into it, you can get it. YB events, I'll turn that on. AIS data, pretty handy. Do remember going up to Napier. There seemed to be a bit of traffic up there. Just knowing that there are ships there outside your 30 miles that your AIS can do, or meant to do. This will pick up satellite AIS as well, and it's delivering it through our system, not through your AIS system. So it's a forewarning thing. It will give you AIS targets within 300 nautical miles. So it's nice to know that there's something out there, not to replace your AIS on board. I will turn the GPS tracking off because that's actually our GPS tracking that people usually use when they're going cruising across oceans. So I click on next, and I have my download here. To be honest, I could have made that box the whole size of the leg, and made this download bigger. This isn't a very big download. It can easily do 250 kilobytes on a go. This software has a mid-file restart, so if your Iridium Go drops the satellite and it disconnects, this will just restart from where it dropped and keep downloading it. So I would always set it up to download, and then go and make a coffee or go to sleep. So yeah, I need to choose my connection type. So I'd select Iridium Go. I can't do that because I would cut you all off. And then I would need to go onto the Iridium Go Wi-Fi. Or, I mean, when you're offshore, you're on the Iridium Go Wi-Fi anyway. So, but good one to remember when you, especially when you get tired. So you'll go onto that connection and then you'll click download all. If you wanted to just download a few things, you can just click on these buttons over here. So I'll go back to the web connection and I'll click on download all, and it's downloading all my weather. So it's getting my grips, my weather route, it's sent it off and it said, you know, Nick's here just off Cape Reinga, and he's going down to the Marlborough Sounds, and it knows my polar, it knows those polar percentages I put in, it knows what the ECMWF's in the middle of updating. That's interesting. And it's calculating my route. And it's, you know, crunched a lot of data to do that, way more data than we've got here. So usually when it does a weather route, it crunches about 50 megabytes data, megabytes. I was thinking about that one yesterday. Anyway, so yeah, it's calculated my weather route and it sent all that information back in a little data file. And I've got all this information here, apart from ECMWF, which for some, it's just updated, so there must be some sort of error with it. And if you do ever get one of these yellow boxes, you click on the yellow triangle and it tells you what it is. So this is the other thing that I wanted to talk, mention before. So you'll see here we have the update times of the models, and so you'll see this, you know, at the global wind, rain, and pressure. That was actually at 5:15. When I looked in the PredictWind app before, on there it said it was at 6:05. This is actually more accurate than in the app. So this is actually when it was updated. So that's really good information to know. If I was coming in somewhere and that PWG model had just updated and I could get the high res modeling, I would be doing it. So yeah, we've got all our parameters there. We can see everything we've downloaded. We downloaded our YB events. I'm not sure what's going to come up on that because there's actually not any active data. What did I choose in the end? Caribbean 600. Should have left it on another race that actually had data. So, but when you download that, you will see all the dots of everyone in the race. It's really cool. So we'll close that and we will come in here. So you'll see up the top here, actually, yeah, well, I'm on this tab, so I'll leave it on it. We have all the different tabs across the top there. You'll see it just tells you what you've, what you did. So, I had a polar speed adjustment on. It tells me that. If I had a true wind speed scale factor on, it just tells me all that information. So, excuse me, I'm just going to have a drink. So you'll see we have for each of the different weather models, they all think we're going to get there at a slightly different time. And that's because all of the models think the weather's going to do ever so slightly different things. And that's cool. That's fine. We have our average wind speed and the distance that we're going to sail following each route. So just to come back a few steps, back to our polars, this is where we can see our true wind speed, true wind angle, speed over ground. And we can look through this and we can see all of the, for the route, we can see all of them for all the different models. But this is where we want to sort of sanity check our polars. Are these the speeds that my boat does? So, and you'll see over here, we've got these exclamation marks. It's getting pretty late. If we click on it, and you'll see here vertical acceleration. this one's roll and vertical acceleration. So we'll go through in a minute and have a look at that, what that is. That's our wave routing stuff. So the wave routing won't change your route, but it will tell you what's going to happen with those different wave states throughout your route. Why would we care about this? We're hardcore racing sailors. If you sail with someone that gets seasick, you might want to run the routing beforehand, and you might be like, bro, you're taking your seasick pills before we leave, because they take a while to kick in. So, and then you might even talk about, hey, the vertical acceleration, because vertical acceleration is this. So obviously your boat's going to be pitching pretty fast. That can be not only make you seasick, but also make it difficult to move around the boat, and the roll as well. So this might be stuff that you want to discuss before the leg. Okay, we're going to have these conditions. We're going to be clipped on 24 hours a day. Whereas when it's nice conditions, you may not have that level of that sort of safety protocol level. So really useful information, and we'll actually go and have a look at the graphs to look at that. So some more in a minute. You see, we've got all the models here, and we can look through them all, and if we wanted to follow one particular model, we might come through here or even just all the models, and we might go, okay, these are the wind angles we're going to be sailing for the next 6 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours. And okay, before we do the changeover of the crew changeover, before we swap, we might actually need to get that number 2 headsail out and get that ready to change. So let's get it set up. Let's get it in a place where we can access it easily. And then when we do the next shift swap over, or when we get this wind change, I'll wake you up and we'll have that sail ready to go, as opposed to the change coming and you piss around for half an hour trying to work out where that sail is, and the other guy's half asleep and he hasn't got his headlamp on, and that sort of thing. So yeah, really useful for planning, when you might want to do sail changes and the like. So as I mentioned before, we can come over here to the graphs. Graphs can be pretty useful. Obviously, again, this can help with our sail selection and how we might sail the boat or how we might plan things. Our wind for the leg, true wind angles, rain, so is there going to be a change in, a wind direction change with this rain? Is there a front? We'll see that in the maps. Look how much colder it gets as you go down to Wellington or the South Island. Yep. So, again, planning. We're going to need to start wearing different gear, warmer gear. And so what I wanted to look at was, so we have our wave height, our wave direction, wave period. Wave period is always important. And current, as I said before, the current's actually pretty, we're only looking at ocean currents, not tidal currents. We're going to have tidal currents later this year. Sorry, not yet. And grids and maps. It's going to be amazing. Anyway, this is what I wanted to look at: influence of waves on the polar. So this is how much the waves are slowing down your boat. And as we saw before, we know this is mostly in upwind, and so it's actually slowing you down quite a bit. That's pretty extreme there, but it is slowing you down. And so when you're going downwind, you'll see this goes above 100%. But this is what we wanted to. This is what I wanted to talk about. So the roll. So this is roll in RMS degrees. So we don't need to know what it is. It's not your boat just heeling over 3 degrees or 4 degrees. It's just a measure. And so you'll see here, we say anything above 4 makes the movement around the boat is difficult and unsafe. And I've actually had lots of feedback on this from people doing crossings, and they love it. Some people said they wouldn't do a crossing when it was above 3. So, you know, you're racing, you've got to sail through this stuff, and you need to think about how you're going to deal with it. So you've got a lot of roll, you've got vertical acceleration above 2. As I mentioned before, vertical acceleration is the boat lifting up and down. I didn't know that you can make anyone seasick. As someone that doesn't get seasick, I didn't believe it, but according to the modelling guys, you can make it. The navies have done some testing, and you can make anyone seasick. So, yeah, anything above 2, you know, even this 1.5 to 2 is you know, pretty nasty. So slamming incidents. This is your boat, you know, trying to kill itself. You might still experience much higher levels of this, especially race boats. And when you get, you know, closer to the coast and you've got the tidal currents, you will probably see more than what is shown in the modeling. So, but when you do see this, if you see this in our modeling in here, I would take it very seriously, because I don't see it very often. So that's your boat just slamming over waves, which none of us likes. So we have our route. So let's actually go over to the map. I mean, you've got all your, actually, just before we do, export. So you can export any of your routes. If you're using this on your tablet, for instance, you could export the route over to Navionics or iNavX, and so you have your weather route in your navigation tool. You can, to put it onto a chart plotter, you need to save it onto an SD card and then put the SD card in, so it's a bit of a pain in the ass. What we actually really recommend you do is pick your key waypoints for the next 12 hours. So we're always looking at where we're sailing for the next, 12 and 24 hours and key times in that period. So we want to, is there going to be a time that we tack? Is there, or whatever. And while we see routes moving apart here, bit of a pain because they do tack straight away. But so really here we would want to look at how big these differences are, and you can see that goes pretty light there in the PWG, and that's tonight. So let's flick over and see what if we can work out why, let's say the ECMWF, whoops, fat fingers. Why does the ECMWF want us to tack out? Yeah, I mean, it must think that there's more breeze out there. I mean, you've got one model wants you to tack, and you've got 5 that think that you should head south. And on the, you can bring that back to small boat tactics as well. Sailing the long board. This strategic positioning here, is that actually going to really help you? I would personally, in that situation, I would be going for the sail the long and get further down the, another rung on the ladder. That difference probably isn't really going to be the game changer. So I'd be getting further down the pack, unless you could really see that there's going to be something light in here, but all the models wouldn't be telling you to go there. And so then when we get to there, and people often say, how do I know what to do? As I say here, we would we would sail through to here. I mean, I guess we might be here by the morning, and we would run our routing again. And we would want to go through the models and look at is the difference here. I could actually move my zoom controls again, come over to the tables, and I actually want to look at the graph and come back here And you'll see here that my true wind angle is essentially upwind. So all of these models want me to sail basically hard on the wind. So through till the morning, at least, you know, until I get my next model run, they're all basically, and we can go and we can analyze that more closely if we wanted to, but they're, you know, essentially sail upwind. Yeah, they basically want me to sail hard on the wind all night. Yep. Yeah. I mean, these ones here are, the GFS is cracking off a bit there, but not much. Spire, UCamo. Yeah, I suppose that, you know, during the night, some of them are sort of cracking off a bit. But it's also, but at least for that first, you know, if we got really lifted, then we might go, okay, that's why we want to get, you know, why we want to, and you can see the true wind direction changing. So that's what's going as you do get lifted. Go back to the map. So essentially what we know from this is that all these models basically want us to sail hard on the wind. I think it was till about 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they want to crack off. So do we need to have, you know, what sail are we using tonight? You know, do we have a number 1 or a number 2 on? And then do we want to have our code 0 hooked up on the deck, ready to go up? Because I can assure you, and you, probably many of you know, putting it on at night is really, really, really difficult. Not that I did that, Bruce did that. Yeah, so you might want to be prepared to have that change. But so all of the models want us to just sail on the wind. So we're going to sail on the wind, and then, you know, as we get lifted, there'll become a point where we go, okay, we're at that crossover point. We might actually drop back off a few degrees. We're still making good to here, and away we go. So that, I guess that's sort of an example of is how I would deal with all of the models. The reality is all of the models want us to head towards the goal. You know, and you would think that this is not something we would want to do. Like, to me, this feels like an expensive move. And obviously the route, we would have updated our routing a couple of times before we get there. And so I would, you know, expect that would, this model would want us to come to windward. I mean, yeah. And then we get around here. Anyway, we could come up with a ton of scenarios as to how we would do that. So I mentioned before the GMDSS forecast. You can see them here. You can click on it and you can read it all, but that's actually really hard. You're better off just to come back to the weather outing and click on them from off here, and then you can see the relevant part. Observations. I should be able to see more. Yeah, there we go. As I zoom in, I can see more. You know, what a cool thing to be able to get over a satellite connection. You know, knowing what, you know, there's lots of things you can do with that, right? Maybe they're not in this situation, it's not quite so important, but you can say, okay, this weather model is lining up with the observations. You know, when I look at the observations, that weather model is doing a good job. You know, I might look at another weather model and go, oh, it's, you know, it's not as close. So therefore I might put more weight on one model or the other, you know, through the observations. Also, is the change coming? Has that front moved through over on that coast or whatever? Yeah, pretty cool information. And our YB events. Now, so I chose an event that hasn't started yet, so we can't see it, but this is where I would see it, unless I chose to turn it on my weather routing page, which is, you might want to try that before you do it. It's nice, really, if you can see it in here and you can see where everyone is. And all their tracks. That's the other thing. It shows all their tracks. That's what's the real pain about having it in your weather routing. that you know, you've got all their tracks all over the page. But when you, it's really dumb not having one. I'll go back, might go back to the other the other page and have a look at one, because it's really cool. You click on the boats, you can see what they're doing, you know, what their speed is and stuff. There's a question: is there a preferred model in New Zealand, and what is your go-to model? Is there a preferred model? I mean, not really. We do have a validation tool, and you can go and have a look at that. You know, every model has strengths and weaknesses. I mean, in Auckland, I love the PWG, but that's more of a dinghy sailing thing, you know, but that would be relevant to around here, you know, or your coastal racing, you know, especially in summer. I don't know why, but that model just seems to do a really good job. Longer term, the ECMWF, you know, as in, when I say longer term, I mean like 3 days plus. The ECMWF is probably going to do a better job, but I would also be looking for trends. So the idea with the models is, yes, you know, short term, I would be looking at the PW high-res models if you've got the high-res modeling, which we have all around New Zealand, and the ECMWF, you know, but longer term trends, big picture stuff, I would be, you know, all of the global models. So UKMO, Spire, the GFS, and ECMWF. I wouldn't be putting all my cookies in the jar for the PW models long term. That's definitely not their strength. Their strength is high res short term. So, what's the time? Yep, I'm definitely a talker. Okay, I will stop sharing there. If there are some relatively generic questions or quick questions, I'm happy to answer those. I will just share my screen again, because I just think it's really cool. Where's the race? Is it on? I want to try and find something that's on. I need to move my Zoom controls. Oh, I don't even know where they all are. No, I've still got the Sydney Hobart boats. Anyway, you will see that, you know, you can click on them from over here, and you can see them on the map, and it's just really cool. You know, so that's another thing to think about with the weather routing is, you know, so that routing that we looked at before, and, you know, like it was basically all of the models were saying, oh, let's go south. You know, let's get onto that starboard tack and you know, and sail upwind. But you might also, and you can do this at any time, I'm not sure what the actual update rate is of the YB tracking, but it will tell you when the update, you know, when you click on it, it should tell you what the time is on it. But then you can see where everyone else is, and it's like, okay, so the models want me to go this way, and the fleet is slightly over that way, so I'm happy to position myself here because I'm on the side that the routing thinks is better. So, you know, you can really strategically think about that stuff, and it can make a big difference. And there's, you know, yeah, I would do it. The other thing I would say about using the routing is that, you know, before you leave, make a plan, download it on as many devices as you can, like for each leg, you know, talk about it with your, the person you're sailing with. Generally, obviously that was on our boat, that was my job. But, you know, I'd still try and talk at Bruce about it. And, you know, and I think it really helped, you know, make some good decisions around the place. You know, I remember when we left Manganui, and at the briefing, I said to everyone about the change coming in, and, you know, we had a really light start. And I think there was about 6 of us that believed the weather routing and went in, I can't remember what the name of it is, but up just south of, you know, just once we'd gone out of Manganui Bay and the next bay around. you know, like we sort of sailed in there to get the new breeze coming across from the west coast, and it worked. And that was in the routing. And at the end of the next leg, I was sort of like, why didn't everyone do that? You know, like, so it's pretty clever. It's pretty powerful. So, you know, use it to your advantage. Okay. There looks like there's a question. YB will be 15-minute updates. So yeah, I just don't know whether we poll the YB servers that often. I'll have to ask. Maybe Neil could send me an email to remind me. I think that's pretty much all I have to say. I don't know whether I can talk too much more anyway. So if you do have anything that you do want to know, please reach out to the support team, support@predictwind.com, and they will help you out, especially if you're having any issues with your Iridium Go stuff. Don't leave that to the last minute, please. You know, get it going, get it working, get it sorted, be on top of it, because, you know, there's so much to do just before you start the race. The last thing you want to be doing is stressing about your SATCOMs. All right, that's all I've got. Thank you very much.